بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. So we left off in greater sins. We were talking about zina or adultery, fornication. We left off talking about what the Prophet ﷺ said, that marriage is my practice or my sunnah, and one who forsakes this practice of mine is not from me. So we're saying that those who give up marriage and say, "Oh, I don't see the benefit in being married. I should just go from person to person to person as I see free, like I want to." And then there's no harm in that. And why do we need this antiquated practice of marriage? So Prophet said this is from him, and it one who gives that up is not from them. So marriage is very emphasized in Islam. Marriage is half of faith. I said the rules and regulations of marriage in Islam are simple so that there are no encumbrances in finalizing a marriage. An Islamic government is bound to provide financial support to the unmarried people who are unable to marry because of poverty. So the government should have foundations for this, and they should have institutions for this that help youth get married. And anyone who's trying to get married, even if they're poor, they should help facilitate and arrange this. The author says, in this way, youthful passions and desires are contained and illicit relationships are minimized. There's a lot of people, some of the cases, people just want to do whatever they want to. They don't care about halal and haram. But there's other cases that the people want to get married, but they don't have the finances, and they feel like they need to have a certain amount or a certain status or all these other things. And then they just see hopelessness in that, and they resort to doing haram. It said if there's an institution from the government that helps with that, then these things will be minimized, and they know that they have a place to go to get help getting married. He said, in order to eradicate this evil, Islam directs us to fulfill a social as well as a spiritual code of conduct. At the social level, it's obligatory for those more fortunate amongst us to fulfill the needs of the less privileged. The wealthy amongst us are duty bound to take care of the financial needs of the poor. It is likewise obligatory to make a sustained and dedicated effort to educate the people for both social welfare and spiritual upliftment. So Islam encourages helping others who are in need. Islam expects every individual to help the members of the community in whichever manner he can. The philosophy of Islam, if adhered to, can ensure the removal of poverty and ignorance, which in turn ensures the removal of envies, perversion, and illicit and illegal affairs associated with these. We see that most of the crimes committed today are due to poverty. Most of the haram things that are done are due to poverty. And that when poverty is eradicated, there'll be less crimes and less things. Then we see that in the time of the Imam, our Imam Mahdi, Ajallah Ta'ala Farajul Sharif, they say that they will be very safe and secure, and people can travel far without being bothered. And that even people can put the hand in the pocket of someone else if they want to, that there would be no problem. And if they had sadaqah, that they will try to give it away, but they won't have anybody to give it to because the poverty will be eradicated in that time. He says, with an early marriage, the basic material needs of man are taken care of, and an individual is well equipped to resist getting involved in degrading acts like adultery. And we talked about the many obstacles that youth face today in marriage. Some of them financial, some of them are from the parents. The Prophet used to have people married at a younger age, but today people are putting a lot of restrictions. We said that they need to have certain type of degree, certain type of job, certain type of house, certain type of car. certain type of family, certain type of many different things, making the conditions very complicated. And then when I
I have a
spoke,
quick question on that.
yes,
One of the biggest impediment that I've seen, at least coming from the country, Pakistan, and maybe India, Bangladesh too, one of the biggest impediment to this thing is, like you said, poverty, but also setting the amount of dowry, mahr. Does Islam say anything about what is considered as a reasonable mahr?
it should be lower. It shouldn't be very high. When we look at the dowry of Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, it was lower. It was not some extravagant amount that people make today. And that's the problem I see in the East. When I look and speak with the people in Iraq, the dowry is really high. And I've also seen other countries that I've been to communities in America, and they say that one person came to me, an elder in community, and was saying that we don't find any suitable matches for our women because all the women had like doctor's degrees, medical degrees, and things like this. And the guys in the community didn't have those high level degrees. So they said amongst the Shia community, we don't find too many people that are on the same level as the girls that we have, but we find from the Hindus, they similar culture and similar language, and they have the men and that have the same medical degrees. So can the women marry them since they're compatible and they can't find a Shia that's compatible with job wise?
Wow.
And they were some of them were allowing their daughters to marry Hindus instead of Shias because of the job. And I told them that's not marriage. That that marriage isn't valid, and they're not allowed to do that. But they were trying to get some sort of validation out of me to do that. But we can't do that.
But when
So
people negotiate that between the couples, or if they know each other, or they're negotiating that, is that even fair to do that? Can you bring it down a little bit? I feel like it's so offensive for somebody to say, the woman is not agreeing to it because she wants $100,000 dowry. I mean, is that even allowed by Islam? And that would be unfair if it is.
I mean, they shouldn't make extravagant dowries like that because it makes it impossible. So that means just people who have money can get married, and poor people can't get married. When we see that that wasn't the case in Islam, that most of even the poor people would get married, So marriage
I also want to say one thing that, sorry, somebody's talking.
Sure.
No. So, I mean, in India, Pakistani culture, it's actually, yes, I agree with Brother Jamil about the, meher, but the main problem comes from the side of the boys, because they demand a lot of stuff from the girl's family. Sometimes even they want expensive cars, they want expensive stuff and things like that. So it is I think the more problem in our cultures in India and Pakistan, not about the Middle East, is more that many girls keep waiting because the boys' family, they demand a lot of stuff. They need a car, they need a good, furniture and all those things. And so that's another problem, a big problem.
Yeah. In Iraq, I was with a friend of mine, and he was trying to get married into a religious family, and he studies too. And he was telling me he went to meet with the family, but they made the dowry so high that it was like impossible for him to do anything. He's like, I can't even go forward with that. And she wanted to marry him. He wanted to marry her. And the family just made it kind of impossible for him to do anything. So yeah, so sometimes, if someone loses hope and they try and they try and they try, and every time they go to get married and they want to get married, they get shot down because something like that. They say, oh, I'm never going to have enough money. I'm never going to have the job they want. I'm never going to be this or that and this type of thing. And they'll give up, and then they'll resort to doing haram. So that's the problem. That's what we have to make sure it doesn't happen in society. So he said, next he says, self-control is further strengthened by practicing the laws of Islam, which are encoded at the spiritual level. Islam has defined some acts of worship as obligatory. Our Holy Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have taught us and guided us in numerous recommended acts of worship like mustahab fast, mustahab prayers, ittikaf. Every prayer essentially refines a person's character and raises him to the greater heights of nobility. By earnestly keeping up prayers and fasts, an individual can strengthen his inner resources and develop his spirituality. Such an individual will have the power to exercise control over his passions and natural instincts and will not stoop to commit adultery, which is declared as a greater sin by his religion. This is the greater jihad, jihad al-akbar, which is fighting against our lower desires and taming ourselves to be able to be obedient to Allah and to stay away from those things which he has commanded us to avoid, the muharramat. And fasting is one of those ways that we practice self-restraint and self-control over our natural desires, such as drinking, eating, sexual desires. And through this, inshallah, we'll be able to control all the other desires through being constantly aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is when we're fasting, we are aware of Allah. We are more conscious of what we're doing and we're alert in these things because we know that we are fasting. And fasting helps us, it's like training. We can say in month of Ramadan, we train ourselves and tame our soul and get used to doing certain practices. But at the end of Ramadan, after Eid, it shouldn't stop. We should, if we've built good habits in the month of Ramadan, we should continue on throughout the rest of the year. And it helps us control our desires so that we can control our desires all of the time. And we should always try to improve day by day. He said, Islam prescribes very strict and severe laws of punishment for the wrongdoers. This is necessary. It is only the severity of a law that compels average individuals to abide by it. But however, the severe punishments prescribed in Islam, maybe they are always tempered by Allah's mercy and compassion. Had, or punishment for adultery, can only be executed if there's 4 just witnesses. So Islam, if we have a severe punishment for something, then that person, the average person in society is going to say, I'm not going to do that because that carries that sort of punishment. For example, stealing a certain amount of things. There's a lot of conditions with the punishments in Islam to be executed, implemented. But if all the conditions are present and it's met and it's there, then that thing can be implemented, which is very hard to do, actually. But if someone knows, for example, stealing, they're going to cut my fingers, is that person going to steal? No. The punishment for the fornication is 100 lashes. Is someone going to do that? No. Or for the adultery, they have a even stricter punishment than that. So someone will say, I wouldn't want to do that sin because the punishment is severe. So it keeps people away from that, is what the author is getting at. But for the punishment for adultery to be executed, there have to be 4 just witnesses who have seen the sin committed with their own eyes. He says, obviously, the worldly punishment can be given only to those who publicly and shamelessly behave like beasts. It is truly amazing that even for such loathsome behavior, Islam orders leniency and punishment. So when we say 4 just witnesses that have seen the act, it doesn't, for the had to be implemented, it doesn't mean that, okay, 4 just witnesses have seen someone coming out of a hotel room, for example, a man and a woman who are not married, and they have come out of a hotel room. Or they see a man and a woman in a room together. No, that's not what is meant here. It means that these 4 just witnesses, even they have to actually see the act of fornication, the actual penetration of the act. And not just, even if they see them in the bed together, under the covers and they don't see the act of the penetration, the punishment cannot be carried out. So that's what I say, we have Allah's mercy in this act, because in this implementation of this punishment, because it's very hard to meet the conditions. When I was studying the chapter on Islamic punishments, my teacher was telling me it's almost impossible for all of these things to be implemented. Even if someone, they generally didn't know the punishment for this sin, they can't implement it on them. Or there's a lot of conditions with these things. So people actually have to see the act of fornication for the punishment to take place. So very difficult. But the punishment is still there, and that's the worldly punishment. But the punishment in Akhirah is still there. So when we learn those punishments for the one who commits zina, that should keep us away from that act. He said the present day youth is caught in the mire of economic and moral decline. They are unstable. They believe it is of advantage to avoid the bonds and responsibilities of marriage and satisfy their natural needs with illicit relationships. Some people I've seen, they don't get married because of tax reasons. They'll say, "Oh, I don't want to be married because when we have kids and the mother files as a single mother and gets a lot of tax credits, but if we get married, we won't get that money anymore." And they make a lot of reasons not to get married. Or they say, "Why do we need the marriage? Why do we need a label on us? We've seen so many people get divorced, and if we're not married, then how can we get divorced? So we've been together for a long time, but if we get married, then everything's gonna go bad." So they make a lot of excuses. It says, undoubtedly, these problems have arisen because we do not implicitly practice the code of conduct as laid down by the divine law, and we do not fully implement the rules and regulations as defined in Islam. Had there been an Islamic government, it would have endeavored to eradicate this immorality from the society by providing the basic needs to the poor and facilities for an early marriage. So if we had Islamic government, we should have these type of things in our society to help these people get married and remove the obstacles from their path. And this is something that people could donate to help facilitate others who are getting married. He said an Islamic government would strictly ban pornography, bars, nightclubs, etc., all of those which arouse sexual desires in people and lure them to indecencies and indiscriminations. Islam prohibits all activities that excite passions and promote shameful and degrading behavior. So, like we said in the beginning of the previous class, that the ayat that Allah tells us to not even approach the zina, not to go near it. So any of those things that leads towards that, we should stay away from, and Islam prohibits those things. If someone is looking at pornography, they will be excited and want to go commit that act. Or they go to bar or nightclub, like he mentioned, people are dancing together, and men and women, and then they will get, it will lead them to something else. So Islam has prohibited these gateways towards zina. He said the strict laws of punishment in Islam should not lead us to think that Islam only wishes to punish the wrongdoers. Its laws are designed to rid the society of all evil. In fact, Islam takes a very compassionate view of sinners. On the one hand, the stern orders of punishment are strictly regulated, so no injustice is done in carrying them out. On the other hand, Islam outlines a code of social obligation that creates an atmosphere of joy and dignity for all. No one in an Islamic society would be compelled by helplessness and desperation into bad conduct. It is a pity and our misfortune that we fail to implement fully our social obligations. So he's saying that in an Islamic society, that if we were to carry out our social obligations in helping the less fortunate, no one would be helpless. no one would be in desperation. No one would think that there's no hope for me, that I have to go and do, if I want to fulfill my natural desires that I have to be with the opposite gender, I need to go commit haram to do that, or I need to have they need to have a girlfriend because they can't afford to have a wife. The ladies need to have a boyfriend because they can't afford, or there's so many obstacles for them to having a husband. So if we were to implement our social obligations and we would have these institutions that would help people get married, it would remove a lot of obstacles. And if people were helping other people who are less fortunate to them, then this would also help. And he said it's our own fault that because we are failing in implementing all of these teachings that we have from Islam. So he said society, the Muslim countries are in that situation because of their own actions, basically, is what he's saying. He said Islam has not ignored the punishment for the wrongdoers. Punishment is prescribed for sins in order that law and order are maintained in society. Had, or punishment for adultery, is prescribed only when a person performs this shamelessly and openly in the presence of 4 just witnesses. So, like I said before, 4 people have to see the act itself, which is very difficult to someone to see, 4 just witnesses to see that, unless they do it openly and shamelessly. And most of the cases are not like that. He says he defiles the chastity of some woman and satisfies his beastly desires in the worst manner. Islam orders the punishment only when 4 just witnesses state that they have witnessed the actual act with their own eyes. Islam punishes the fornicator when he plays with the honor of the society. It is surprising that even in this case, Islam has been lenient with the wrongdoers to a great extent. He said it's necessary to mention this remarkable fact. In today's world, the youth is having such a state of mind that due to the economics and morals of the society, they try to escape from the bonds of marriage and are attracted towards sexual perversions. So I think a lot of youth, they're trying to get away from the Islamic things because I've seen a lot of places they say that, oh, our country has been in war and we always see, we've had Islam all these years, but we have all these trials and all these tribulations and our country's in bad shape. But look at the West, they don't have Islam, and look how far advanced they are and so many things. And I've seen, it really shocks some people as Americans coming to Iraq, for example, or to other Muslim countries. They said, why do you want to come here? We're trying to go over there. I remember talking with one guy and I told him, I said, it's 15th of Sha'ban. You go to Haram, there's so many thawab just for tonight. It's so good. You should, take some time off of work and go. He said, he went like this. He said, I'm far away from that stuff. I don't really care about that stuff. This is Karbala'i person, in the holy city. They say, oh, I'm far away from that. You go there. He said, I want to go to New York. And it's a lot of people like this. They're either in some countries, maybe they've seen corruption or they haven't seen Islam implemented in the way that it should. If all the society were actually carrying out the way that Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam had laid down for us, then people would be running towards the Islamic countries and not running away from them. It's bad when we see that people have to leave the countries of Muslims and go to the country of disbelievers to get help. It should be the opposite. People should be running away from the non-Muslim countries coming towards Islam. We should have the best of everything. We have the teachings for it, but it needs to be implemented. And unfortunately, we have a lot of corruption in society all over the world. In every country, you're going to find corruption. And people say, and if the country says that they're Islamic or they're mostly Muslim and they're still doing corrupt things, then they're going to blame that corruption on Islam. So this is the thing. We see many people outside of those countries. They say, "Oh, the scholars have ruined our country. The Islam has ruined our country," and these things and that thing. There probably is corruption within certain people and certain places and governmental things, but that doesn't have anything to do with Islam. It has to do with those people. And we have to judge Islam by Islam and not by the actions of Muslims. Even if someone says they're an alim or scholar or any position and all these type of things, they're doing corruption and they're corrupt. So, we have to judge people by what Islam says, not Islam by what people do. And that's the problem with most people look at what people do and they say, oh, all the Muslims are like that. Because they see one Muslim acting bad, they say all the Muslims are like that. That's why I said the most effective way we can do da'wah is to have good behavior with people, because they'll say, oh, every Muslim I've met is so nice and so great, is the best people I've ever dealt with are Muslims. And that comes from interaction with good people, with good Muslims. But if every Muslim they met cheated them and steal and lie and all these other things, they're gonna say, oh, don't mess with them. They're gonna cheat you, So we could either bring people toward Islam or push people away from Islam. He said, it's true that our youth are involved in economic difficulties and moral problems, but what is the root of these problems? A simple answer to this is that Islamic rules and regulations are not being followed and are not being put into practice. If the Islamic laws are fully implemented, we would remain safe from immorality. If there had been an Islamic government, it would have endeavored to eradicate the lewdness and immorality from society. It would have provided the means of an early marriage. It would have also endeavored to provide the basic necessities to the common people. It would save its youth, who are its future, from falling into the abyss of destruction. If the Islamic government is in power, such things like shameful films, pornographic magazines, bars, and nightclubs would not have any existence, because these things arouse the sexual desires. The Islamic law prohibits all such activities that promote sin and evil. In Islamic society, the youth is not compelled to remain celibate due to such created problems. Rather, such an atmosphere in society is created wherein all the people spend their life with chastity and dignity. Islam is not only for punishing the people. Its laws are designed to rid the society from all the evils. So Islam wants to safeguard society and have it go on the best way, and not have, open immorality where people can freely, have sexual encounter with anyone they please at any time. And all of these things, it causes a lot of problems for society. It says, for this very reason, Islamic law first takes into consideration the condition and helplessness of the one who committed fornication, and only then does it prescribe the punishment. In order to establish the crime of adultery, it mentions here the witnesses that we've already talked about. And he says, let's see, and if the sinner or the fornicator does not have a legal wife, or the fornicator woman does not have a legal husband, okay, they're only given this punishment. Let's see. This is talking some of the thick of that. All the witnesses must testify that the crime had occurred at one and the same place. All the witnesses must testify in the same sitting. And if four just people quote the testimony of four just witnesses, it's not sufficient. If the four witnesses testify that a certain woman has committed fornication, their testimony will not be accepted if they are not familiar with this woman, since they don't know her, and it could be that she is the legal wife of that man. So there's given conditions for those witnesses. If the three of the four witnesses testify that, and the fourth one refrains from testifying, or if his testimony differs from the previous three witnesses, the 3 witnesses who have testified will be punished for defaming a chaste woman of adultery. If the fornicator, the one who did zina, confesses his crime 3 times, but refrains from the 4th time, they cannot be punished. For a penalty to be lawful, it is necessary that they confess 4 times. I remember someone confessed in front of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. A woman confessed and he turned away from her, like he didn't hear what she said, to give her the chance to go do istighfar, to ask forgiveness. She confessed again and he turned away again, or I forget the whole story, but he was trying to allow her the chance. Not at the first chance say, okay, I'm going to punish you for this. He wanted to allow her the chance to repent. He says he must make 4 confessions in 4 different sittings. He cannot be penalized if he makes 4 confessions in 1 sitting. It's not permitted for the judge to goad the witness or the accused to confess. So he can't push the witness and say, I'm not the witness, but the person who committed the crime. The judge cannot push him to confess or put words in his mouth or complete his sentences. They said the judge must try to maintain purity, chastity, and dignity among the common people and must try his utmost that the crime of adultery is not proved. The judge must try to give such suggestions to the accused that he may be able to save himself from the penalty by falling into doubts and uncertainties. It is also the duty of the judge to encourage the accused to plead innocence. When a married man confesses adultery 4 times, but then later pleads innocence, the penalty will not be imposed on him, and his punishment would be reduced. A new convert to Islam who is unaware of the punishment will not be punished. This is what I mean by those who are ignorant of the rule, who are genuinely ignorant. So the person converts to Islam and then he goes to the house of his girlfriend. He's not married. And he didn't know there's no girlfriend in Islam, and he has relation with his girlfriend, and he didn't know. And then the Islamic government comes and says, what are you doing? Or is this your wife? He says, no, he didn't know anything about the punishment. So he cannot be held accountable for that. If the
Sheikh, can you clarify? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you clarify the 4 different cities or different locations? Could not follow that.
Oh, the 4 cities. So the person can't come and sit and say, I confess I did adultery. I confess I did adultery, like over like 4 times in a row in the same place. If he confessed 4 times in 4 different settings, we can say.
So is the judge the same then for this incident, right?
Yeah, he would have to confess
To the same judge.
And confess, 4 times.
Okay, because I was not clear if it's 4 different cities, there'll be 4 different judges, and they have to rehash the whole thing, or you just.
He would have to come and confess. That's why I said, like when they went to Amir al-Mu'mineen, he kind of made excuse for them, like I didn't hear what you said, or like your home is that way, or like something like this, or turn away from them, so that and give them a chance to
Yeah, but he was the same judge, though. Amir al-Mu'mineen was the same judge. Yeah. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So the point the author is trying to prove by all this is that Islam doesn't want to seek punishment to punish you. It wants to offer a way for you to go repent, and it makes it very hard we have a lot of harsh punishments, but it's very hard to carry out some of these. He says, let's see where, if the person who did zina is unmarried and he is suffering from some illness, the jurist is authorized to it's with the lashes, instead of to hit him with something else, he can hit him with a broom of twigs or a branch of the date palm, and he can consider these lashes. He could also beat him with a branch or a broom and consider each of its twigs equivalent to one lash. The lashing should be so controlled that the flesh of the body is not affected. Now we think of the lash, we think of like pow, like a really hard and breaking skin and this, but it's not like that. He says that the flesh of the body is not affected. The accused, so it's to like a public humiliation type of thing that this person is now, it's kind of it's shameful that they see someone, and no one else wants to be shamed in front of their family or society for doing the crime. So this type of thing deters other people from doing that. So the accused can only be punished when he has committed the crime willingly. If someone is forced to commit fornication, the penalty cannot be imposed on them. We see this in a story. It's coming in this text, I believe. So he says, this is thus the detailed analysis of the laws prescribed by the All-Merciful, who knows his creatures very well. He brings a narration. In the time of Omar, a woman came and confessed adultery, and Imam Ali alayhi salam was there. So Omar, he said, okay, you committed zina, then we will execute you. And he commanded the people to take her and execute her. So Imam Ali alayhi salam was surprised. Said, Omar, did you not ask the lady, like what happened? What's the conditions? What took place with this fornication? Like, how come you did this thing or whatever? Just the woman came and, said, I've done this act, give me the punishment for that act. So the woman said, I was really thirsty in the desert, and I went looking for some water, and I saw a tent who belonged to a man. I approached and asked for water, but he refused to give me any water unless he had adultery with me. So she didn't agree to this, and she ran away into the desert. And then her eyes became sunk in her sockets, and she felt like her bones were breaking. And then she returned and went to this man, and in exchange of drinking water, she gave her body to him. Imam Ali alayhi salam says this is not willful fornication. She didn't want to do this. This is compulsion. And we see that in Surah Ma'adah, ayat 3, whoever is compelled by hunger, inclining willfully to sin, then Allah is forgiving the merciful. So whoever is compelled, they don't want to do that sin, Allah is forgiving. For example, the person doesn't have any food at all and nothing. And it's the only thing there is pork, for example, nothing else, only pork. Very rare this would happen, but just for scenario of this, they could eat that pork. If they were compelled and they were going to die, then that is removed. That obligation is to stay away from it is removed, and it is allowed for them in that circumstance. Or someone is on the verge of dying and there's nothing to drink, the only thing there is wine, for example, then if they were going to die of thirst, then they would have to drink something, and it wouldn't be held against them because it's compulsion and not something they wanted to do. But someone can be in the the line in the sandwich shop and say, oh, all they have here is tuna fish or salmon, and I don't like fish, so the only thing I can eat here is they have a barbecue pork sandwich, so I'm going to order one of those. That's not how it works. So Some people try to play the mind games on themselves and say, oh, I don't like salad and I don't like this thing. The only thing I like on the menu is the bacon or the pork ribs or something like that. But this is an extreme case that nothing is there. And they are compelled, which I pray that none of us ever have to face that situation. So Imam Ali alayhi salam said this woman didn't want to commit adultery, and she's not guilty of adultery at all. And the Imam ordered for her to be released, and she was released. So there's many of these type of judgments that Omar made in the time of he was caliph, and Imam Ali alayhi salam intervened and gave the correct judgment and saved a lot of people from these misjudgments that he would do. This is just an example of one of them. So I think we have ran out of time, and inshallah we'll pick up where we left off next week. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajjal farajahum.